going on, everyone? Sean here with Triangle of Truth, and welcome back to another episode of Manga Madness. In this episode, I wanted to talk about what, to me, is a classic anime of mine, a favorite that I watched very early on, and that is Initial D. I know a lot of people who are fans of anime probably already know about this one, but maybe for some of the newer people that are just getting into things and whatnot, maybe you haven't seen it because this anime has been around for such a long time. I want to say by the time I got into it, they had already done the first three seasons, and those are basically from like the 90s, early 2000s. And then they went on to do the fourth stage and then took a break for years, and then they finally tried to finish it off and do the fifth and final stage. So, figured I'd talk about it, give some of my opinions on what I thought of the show as a whole, and some of the things, because there are some things that I felt that they left very unresolved by the time they actually ended the entire series. So, for anyone who's never watched it, it's basically a street racing anime based on the manga that everybody knows. And you follow the main character, who is Takumi Fujiwara, who basically is kind of a hidden talent when you first meet him in the entire series. You meet what they think to be the best street racing group in the Akina era, and who come to be challenged by a group called I believe it's the Red Suns from Akagi, who are led by Rai and Kitsuki Takahashi. And you find out that really these Akina guys are not that good at all. And they're struggling to try and figure out who they can get to race Kitsuki. And they eventually learn and find out that the best, downhill driver in all of Akina is someone that owns an old AE86, which is a Toyota Corolla. When they learn about this, the person that told them, who is the manager of a gas station, is actually talking about Fujiwara's father, not Takumi himself. Well, or as it happens, in one of the episodes, Kitsuki's doing the downhill on Akina, just kind of getting a practice run in. Takumi, who does the deliveries for his father's tofu shop in the mornings, that's how he learned to drift. Was he would drive, do the deliveries up and drive back down. Well, he's coming home from one of his deliveries, and he's not thinking anything of this. He just wants to get home. And so he's trying to get around Kitsuki and basically just makes him look like a fool, and you're left trying to figure out what's going on. So that's kind of the basis for how some people learn about him, and the characters try to convince him into the racing to race Kitsuki and et cetera, et cetera. And Takumi's really not interested in any of this. He's really at first, he's a very aloof character, just kind of introverted, keeps to himself. He does have his friends and whatnot, but outside of that, he's just a real quiet, intense kind of guy, or he does have an intensity to him, I should say. And he has a girl that he likes, and to convince him to race, his dad says, if you go and you win, I'll give you a free full tank of gas and you can take her out. And of course Takumi's like, yes. So as you can imagine, they do the race, Takumi wins, and thus begins this whole the series really gets going at this point, where because now people are coming to challenge him and this and that, and like I said, it goes on for 5 seasons. At the end of the first season, the big race is he races Rai Takahashi, who is undefeated in his entire street racing career. They never exactly say how long that is, but he's undefeated. So, of course, as you can imagine, he beats Rai, so that ends that, and that's when Takumi's legend really starts building and building, and they go into season 2, and the main antagonist, he faces several actually in that one, but the main one is, the leader of the Emperors, who has an Evo 3 and this and that, and he blows up the motor in the 8-6 during this, and that's kind of how season 2 ends a little bit, and whatnot. And then they go into season 3, which is actually about an hour and a half long to 2 hour long movie, just one big giant movie. And in this one, it's he's trying to struggle with it. He goes back. Well, his father has a racing engine that he puts in the 8-6, and that's kind of how it's resurrected. And to test himself, he races it, and he basically, the way he gets his confidence back in himself is he goes and challenges the leader of the Emperor on his home turf, and ends up beating him and this and that, and that's how it goes. And you go into stage 4, where now it's Takumi and Katsuki on they're this team that they're on, Project D. So there it is. I was going out of my head. And their goal is, it's just the 2 drivers. They have a full team that manages the cars. Rai gives them their strategies, this and that, and they go to different provinces in Japan to race their best local racers and beat them, and then try to set course records. And that is the entire premise of season 4 into season 5. In season 5, you learn a little more about Rai as a character. You see a little bit more of his history, some of why he is the way he is, and an unresolved issue with an old love and another guy. I guess it was kind of a rival, and whatnot. So that's really cool, because Rai is one of those kind of mysterious but really cool characters, and he's always been one of my favorites in any anime, or even in comics. Just, he's a really good, well thought out character. And after the 5th stage, they just kind of stopped for a little while. They never actually went through the entire, I think it was Konagawa province, if I remember right. If I'm wrong, please tell me in the comments. And then they get to the final place where it's, these are the 2 best drivers in that entire province, and then they kind of held off for a little bit. And then they came back and they did what they call final stage, where most of that is actually, it's like a 4-episode deal of Takumi against someone that's basically the new him in that province, and it just happens to be a kid that drives another AE86, but he's got a coupe instead of a hatchback. So, and they go through the whole race with that. It's very drawn out. It's really cool. The race scenes in the entire series, especially as it went on, it's a little bit like Ruby, where at first the animation looked kind of cheap, and then as it went on and they had more money and technology improved, it just got better and better. And by the time you get to the final stage, it's the way they do the cars and the drifting and everything is so good. And having oh god, what's his name? He's a famous racer in Japan that basically invented drifting, and his name went out of my head right now, and Tsuchiya. There it is. I knew if I talked about it long enough, I'd get it. And he helped and designed and directed a lot of this, so that what you see and what they're talking about with racing and driving theories is actually reality based. It's not just they made it up for a cartoon. And that was always something to me that was really cool. But anyways, so they end the series with this race, and for me, who was someone that followed the series for over a decade, to watch all of this and whatnot, I was a little disappointed that they ended it the way they did, because I personally feel that there were at least 2 big things they left unresolved. One of which is they never did a rematch between Takumi and Katsuki to see where they were, since they've been doing all this racing together on a team. Their skills have dramatically gone up, and just to see who would prevail in this one, and I didn't care where it was, just pick one of the downhills or whatnot and go for it. 2, Takumi's father, who is the one that taught him, and is you can clearly see when that he is better than Takumi is at driving. And you kind of see this when Takumi finally he gives him the 8.6 at some point in the series and goes and buys himself an Impreza 22B. And in one of his times, just when he first gets the car and he's kind of test driving and see how it is, he comes up behind Takumi running down Akina and just destroys him. I mean, just with ease. And that screws with Takumi's head for a while, because the one thing that Takumi realizes about the 22B is, A, that was his father that kicked his butt, and B, everything he can do in the 8.6, he can do in the 22B faster. So he struggles with that for a little while as well. But they never, ever give you a chance for Takumi to confront his dad and actually race him and show Bunta in a racing scenario. I would have even taken a flashback episode to watching him race. That, and that was something that they never showed. They just kept it a big mystery, and I never liked that. I really wanted them to expand on Bunta and make him a little more prevalent in the story instead of being so just kind of a side-ish character. So that was the disappointment to me. And then kind of the way they end it too, with the last race with him and with Tech and the other kid is, he blows a motor or something and skids come around, hits the clutch in, and goes across the line first, going backwards. And it's like, okay, cheesy ending, and whatnot. But they kind of did the same thing with Stage 4, because he was getting his butt kicked by Godhand, who he learned the one-handed driving technique from, and he wins the race because Godhand gets overheated in the car because he's an older gentleman, has to get out and puke, and Takumi just drives by him after he kind of broke his car, and that's how he wins. And it's like, so there were things that they did later on in the series that were just not great, and whatnot. But that is what it is. There oftentimes are with your favorite stuff. You maybe won't like every single decision that they make, and those are the nitpicks for me. Other than that, being a big car guy myself, that was a series that always resonated with me, because not only did I get to learn about drifting in general, you get to really kind of see an insight into what some of the Japanese car scene was like during that time period versus what we do here in America for street racing, like you see on YouTube and everything. So it's a very different vibe. So for me, it was always very educational. I've always loved Japanese culture, always found it to be very fascinating. So, for anybody who's into cars, or you just want something a little different than your normal animes that are very action-based, very sci-fi, fight and this and that, give that a shot. Give that a shot. Give this a shot, because it really is great. And you've got, 5 or 6 seasons. It's a lot to cover, and you'll just have a really good time. Anyways, that is all I've got for this week, guys. I hope you have a good one. Stay safe and healthy. I'll catch you next time. Later.